You can't depend on those whom you don't respect. It's difficult. You can't depend on those you don't trust. You can't depend on those you don't like. You can't depend on those you don't love. And you can't depend on those whom you don't fear. Because if you don't fear them, you're very casual with them. And if you're casual with them, just in case they know a thing or two, you won't be able to listen to them. If you were to take your question and put it within the context of daughter of fire, what you have is a woman who is dependent on her own ways of thinking about things. Then, in a very strange way, she falls in love with this man. And this man does a lot of strange things, you know. He devalues her. Whatever meaning she had in her life, he takes away. Whatever money she had, he takes. He makes this woman completely dependent on himself. Now imagine you take someone's money, you take someone's emotions, you take someone's idea, her past, you destroy everything about this woman. She comes to your door, you don't even look at her. But because she loves you, she has no place to go. She has to ask you for money to pay rent. It's her money, but she has to ask from you. That dependency ultimately made her profoundly sufficient in thinking, in feeling, in writing, and in speaking. That dependency ultimately made her sufficient and independent. However, because she never had a son or a child, at a certain point in her life, her insufficiency kicked in. Insufficiency as a mother. She wanted to be a mom, but she couldn't. She wanted to have a son, but she didn't have one. There was a guy, a young kid, Llewellyn Vaughan Lee. He liked her enough to say, "Why don't you live upstairs?" And eventually, she gave her foundation to him, as if wisdom can be passed down to the people you like. And now you have a guy who doesn't write well, who doesn't speak well. You know, it's mostly poetry. There is no substance to the thing that he says. For me. And so even though she was sufficient, you know, in her craft, when it came to having a family, she had none. And that to some extent led her astray. I think, Cassie, the best way to be it's good for someone to know that they are insufficient intellectually, so they begin to reflect, read, think, begin to understand. they begin to realize they're insufficient emotionally. So they begin to observe their emotions, the social forces, the sort of emotions those create, what emotions you like to have inside you, what emotions you don't like to have inside you. If there is anything about you you feel you want to categorize as spiritual, you can go to church, go to mosque, read books, pray, cry, join groups. Also know that you are a physical entity. Find a man or a woman, but don't expect them to understand the whole of your intellect, emotions, or your spiritual fantasies. Okay. Create a good relationship. Have children. Be good to the in-laws. Forget friendships, they mean nothing. What you will have is that intellectually, you can think, reflect on your own, and you can write. Emotionally, you are rich enough to feel so you can think and write. Spiritually, both your intellect and your emotions will be housed by your spirit. And because both the intellect and the emotions are refined enough, you're able to express them, whether verbally or writtenly. Your body needs rest. Find rest in the arms of a man or a woman. A lover, doesn't matter. Create a history with them. That history will connect the two of you together. Even if there are bad times, difficult times in the relationship, the history will pull the two of you back together. Have children. Know that you will get old, you will get sick, you will need people. You will not depend on friends, on God. Your husband, your wife, your kids will help you. Your sisters, your brothers, your grandparents. The less you have dependency on people you don't know, the less stress in your life. If you don't have those things, it's a really, really difficult life you're going to have. You know, I think the biggest gift Bhai Sahib gave Irina was he was able to give her his vision. And that vision became Irina's guide. She became 90% self-sufficient. And that's the thing, you know, it depends whose narratives you're buying. Because you buy with your sacrifices, you buy with your emotions, you buy with your time. If you happen to buy the wrong narratives, your life is going to turn out to be a mess. And once you become addicted to the wrong narratives, it is so difficult to get over the addiction. It doesn't mean that you should lose hope. It just means that you will have a bit more respect about how long it's going to take for you to get your health back. Dependency by itself is not sufficient. You need to be dependent on the right things for the right amount of time. And then you can cut your ties. It's like labor. You give birth to a child after 6 months, forced labor. Well, the chances of, this child having physical issues are going to be great. The other thing, I think it's a little subtle, esoteric. You need pain. You really need to be dependent on pain. But you need to have the tools to process the pain well, so you could morph into insight and wisdom. But if you don't have the tools to process pain the right way, it'll just paralyze you further. As a 20-year-old, it's very difficult for you to empathize with a 70-year-old man who's walking the street and walking very slowly, crossing the street. You keep honking your horn. I remember this scene on Fruitvale. I was at Fournay trying to get some baguettes. This 80-year-old man, the light was green. He was crossing the street. And then he was like in the middle. He was walking so slow with a cane. And the light turned red. He was in the middle of the street. This white Mercedes-Benz, the driver, began to honk their horn. Not once, not twice, repeatedly for I don't know how many seconds. It just seemed so long. The old man got really, really confused. And he sat in the middle of the street on the asphalt. And this woman came out and started saying all these nasty things to this man. I don't know whether or not that experience is engraved in this young woman's mind or not, but the 20-year-old will soon, hopefully, turn to be 60 or 70. She'll have difficulty walking. What pain does for you, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, intellectual pain, or spiritual pain, it makes your connection to other people stronger because you understand the things you used to make fun of, they have now come to visit you. Walking slow, for example. Becoming forgetful, Only now you're able to appreciate what your own mom had done for you all those years. Why? You're a mom now. You don't have time. Every minute of your life is being taken. And since, all of us here are in the business of walking the classroom and talking, the nice thing about pain is that you can go to the classroom and talk. Because pain signifies loss. Loss creates grief. Grief creates loneliness. And because you're fortunate enough to use loneliness as a place where you sit and reflect, the fruit of loneliness and reflection is insight. And it could be very transformative for the people who come to your class. In some ways, we're very lucky to live in America because there is such a bumper sticker culture. Exercise an act of compassion. Someone like Eckhart Tolle or Sadhguru has a workshop. It's only for a week. And it's only like $12,000, but it'll change your life. Jesus couldn't do it in like 3, 4, 5, 10 years, but Eckhart Tolle can in like a week. We're very lucky because we are inspired by the bumper stickers, but it'll never morph into dependency. You depend on this crutch. If it's not there, you'll fall. They did this study in Texas, and they realized that the culture in Texas is such that people are embarrassed to be dependent or attached to other people. So they try to be as independent and as detached as possible. Imagine if Plato didn't have this intense dependency on Socrates. You would never have the dialogues. You would never have Plato, therefore you would never have Aristotle. If you didn't have Aristotle, you wouldn't have Aquinas or Augustine. If you didn't have them, you probably wouldn't have Christianity the way it is today. During the Renaissance, what happened was that all these philosophers, artists, they went back to the classical Rome and Greece. Because Socrates and Plato did something to human imagination. And it all began with the love Socrates had for that woman, and then the love and the dependency Plato had for Socrates. It's good to be dependent on the right things. It's your salvation, really.